that is scorched, and for rivers and brooks and streams that are dry. They are tears brought on by the drought, tears from a fear that nature somehow is changing. The references to holes in the ozone, the inexorable rise in Earth's temperature, and the way that the weather and the environment have become dangerous suggest that even when I was writing the novel, these issues were beginning to alarm us. The second of the themes that struck me as contemporary are the observations from so many of the women about toxic masculinity. Narrator Scottie Winston reveals early on, "Patience told me two things when Laura, my wife, introduced us almost 20 years ago. She told me that as a dowser she is in touch with the earth, and she told me that as a man I have great potential to become grotesque." I'm not sure I have written anything truer. I love the character of Patience and how she constantly calls out Scottie and his male peers for the myriad ways that men have unfairly co-opted power from women. When I saw her discussing the ritualized subjugation of women, I felt her pain and frustration as acutely now as I did when I wrote those words for her. Water Witches is the earliest of my novels that I allowed to remain in print. It was my fourth published novel, and the sixth I had written, and preceded Midwives by 2 years. It is less about dread than everything that would come after, novels such as The Double Bind, The Guest Room, and The Flight Attendant. It was before I had started to write historical fiction, such as Skeletons at the Feast, The Light in the Ruins, and The Sandcastle Girls. It was born in a period when all my books were set in Vermont, or in one case, Vermont and New Hampshire. Everything I wrote between 1995 and 2007 was set in northern New England. I think at the time I thought that would always be the case. And Water Witches is far and away the closest I have ever come to writing a novel with jokes. I'm not sure I can call it a gently comic novel, because the stakes are too high. But I found myself smiling at Scottie Winston's take on his neighbors and the utter absurdity of what he does for a living as a lobbyist for big business, such as it is in Vermont. Finally, this is the only book I ever wrote with touches of magical realism, and that too made me happy. I mention happiness here because while my work continued to evolve over the last 25 years, rereading this early novel made me smile. It wasn't simply the text. It was those Proustian Madeleines of where I was at that point in my life. I remember how much fun I had researching and writing the tale, especially the days I spent with water witches outside and lobbyists inside. And I remember imagining fatherhood and wondering what it would be like. There is a moment when Scottie is watching his young daughter, Miranda, dancing alone in the family backyard one summer night amid the fireflies, and he thinks to himself, "Miranda is Grace." My daughter was at least a year from being born when I wrote that passage, but my wife and I named her Grace when she arrived. And while I hadn't yet discovered firsthand how much I would love being a parent, it's clear even from the text that parenthood would be among the two favorite roles I have gotten to play in this world. The other is being a husband, a role that Scottie also cherishes. Water Witches will always exist for me in that liminal period just before I would become a father and just before the internet would change the world. And as quite literally, I was finally understanding how to write a novel. It was a gift for me to rediscover the story. Happy reading. Fingers crossed my work never disappoints you. Chris Bohjalian. Part 1. Chapter 1. Some people say that my wife's sister is a witch. My father for one, my brother for another. And while I will not dispute their use of the term when they are merely alluding to her somewhat contrary nature, I do take issue with them when they use the word to malign what she believes is her calling. After all, it is a calling that to a lesser extent my wife hears as well. No, my sister-in-law is no witch, at least not literally. She, along with my wife and my mother-in-law, is simply a dowser. She is capable of finding underground water with a stick. She is capable of divining underground water with a stick. And